people that have died fighting for our country.
Oh my God.
Everybody needs to be respected.
Anybody know what this is? Yes, sir. Well, this is actually a 50% detailed replica of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldiers up at Arlington Cemetery. This belongs to the Exchange Club of Rome, Georgia, which I'm a member of. I'm Bill King, chairman of the Americanism Committee. I chose this project for us this year. This is brand new. This is only the third time we've shown it. The reason I chose it, you'll find out as I tell you about this whole presentation. This is the tomb of the World War I unknown soldier. They chose one soldier from World War I to represent all of the unknowns. The way he was chosen, back in 1921, 3 years after the war was over, Congress decided to pay tribute to the unknown soldiers by having one of them buried at Arlington Cemetery. So the way they chose him, they dug up 4 unknown soldiers from an American cemetery in France in October of 1921. They chose a veteran of that war to pick out one of the caskets. They put the remains of the 4 unknown in 4 identical caskets. They asked him to put a bouquet of white roses on the coffin that he would like to have represent all of the unknowns. He chose the 3rd coffin from the left. The other 3 were reburied in a national cemetery, an American national cemetery in France. The one that was selected was put on a ship, sent over to Washington, D.C. They moved his body from the ship to the Capitol building in the Rotunda, and it lay in state until November the 11th of 1921, so they could get the tomb ready for him. They'd actually started the tomb before he was selected. On November the 11th, the tomb was dedicated and he was buried. But the tomb that he was put in did not have this upper part to begin with. It only had from here down. He was buried 7 feet below the ground, below the tomb. Buried with him, because they knew where he had died, they buried 2 inches of the soil that he was killed on with him. Years later, they added this part of the tomb. The reason this tomb is so big is because this was supposed to be the war to end all wars. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But they decided they'd never build another one this big. Down here you see the grave marker for the unknown soldier from World War II. World War II went from 1941 to 1945. Those are the years that the United States was in the war. The war actually started in 1938, but we didn't get involved until Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. It ended in 1945. This one soldier represents all of the unknown soldiers from World War II. The one over here represents all the unknown soldiers from the Korean War. This one, you notice it's different. It's got an inscription on it, right? Here's why. And this is the reason that I decided to do this project. 1958 to 1975 were the years that we were in Vietnam. During the Vietnam War, they came out with DNA testing. They improved it so much that it became almost infallible. In fact, it is infallible. That means that we could prove who that person is with DNA testing. I was in the Air Force for 21 years. During that time, I served at Dobbins Air Force Base for 18 years. One of the people I worked with was named Pat Blassie. She was an officer. I was an officer. We worked together. She was a public affairs officer. I was the band director. And she would book our band to play at different places. I worked with her for 8 years. During that 8 years, her family was in full. They did 8 years of research and finally convinced our government to dig him up, have the DNA testing done, and prove that that was her brother. They finally convinced the government to do that, and indeed it was Lieutenant Michael Blassie. He is now being reinterred over in Ohio. In 1998 was when he was identified. The reason this inscription is on there is because there'll never be another unknown soldier, because DNA testing can identify all the soldiers that are killed. They couldn't do that before Vietnam. So this grave, if you ever go to Washington, there's nobody in this particular grave. They've left it empty. So they put this inscription that says, honoring and keeping faith with America's missing servicemen. Now, the real ones in Washington are twice this big. You see on this tomb the inscription, "Here rests in honor and glory an American soldier known but to God." This tomb was built in Rome, Georgia by Rome Construction Company. All of the carving and all the painting was done by a Rome artist using the guidelines from Arlington National Cemetery. It took about 8 months to build it. It cost us $8,000. The 3 replicas you see here cost us around $1,000. And we're just glad to be able to show it because some people will never get to see it. This is the price of freedom, part of the price of freedom. The picture you see behind you is the eastern side of Arlington Cemetery. In Arlington Cemetery, there are 500,000 graves. And that's just one military cemetery. It's the biggest one. People are buried there that served in our military as far back as the Civil War, all the way up to the present day. And to this day, we have 20 funerals in Arlington every day. Do we have any questions? You have one. That's great. Is he still alive?
Yes.
Would you tell him thank you for his service?
My papa was in it. I think he was in the military. I have to ask him, but I know he served.
If any of you have any relatives that served in the armed forces, please thank them for me. I did 21. I did Navy first. I did Navy for 3 years with the Navy Band at Washington. I was involved in over 200 funerals at Arlington. That and knowing the sister of the unknown from Vietnam is the reason I chose to do this. I know Billy Jones was a general. Was he in the Air Force? Okay. Air Force is part of it.
Okay.
I know a Billy Jones that was general. In fact, he was the adjutant general for the National Guard in Georgia. I don't know if it's the same Billy Jones or not. Yes. No. I'll tell you one thing, kids. You need to be very respectful of our people in military and our people in public services, policemen, firemen, EMTs. They're the ones that keep freedom going for all of us. Okay? Be very respectful of that. And if you have an American flag at home, make sure it's always in good shape. If it ever gets torn or it gets faded, take it down and turn it in to the American Legion closest to you, and they will properly dispose of it. You never take an American flag and throw it away. That's the worst way you can get rid of an American flag that can't be shown anymore. So respect that flag, because our flag is the only flag in the world that has something on it that represents every single person in the United States, and that's the star. The stars on our flag represent the states. The 4th star on the American flag, if you go to the top left and start with that star and count over 4, the 4th star is Georgia.
Wow.
Okay, that represents every one of you. Okay, and everybody in the state of Georgia. There's not another flag in the world that has that distinction. Yes.
My dad's dad died. It died. Not in the army, but after he retired, and we have a flag, and we keep it in a glass case.
And it's folded in a triangle. That's because that flag probably was on his coffin, and then they folded it there before he was buried, and they gave it to his wife or somebody in the family.
And if they were really good, they put the shells in there also.
If it was a good detail, yeah, they're supposed to put the shells in the flag, in the final fold. Yes.
May I ask why they always fold the flags up and give it to the wife?
Because she is the surviving family member. And they fold the flag. Now, here's something you may not know. The flag is folded 13 times. The flag is folded 13 times in honor of the 13 columns.